And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection. I'm your host, Robert Pictou. Ever since radio broadcasting began back in the 1920s, certain people had the ability to capture an audience. These radio personalities entertain us, excite us, make us think, even make us cry, simply with the sound of their voices. They're often the face of a radio station and make appearances at events and advertise their locations. On today's Open Connection, Vancouver Virgin Radio host, Amy Spencer.
Robert, I mean, I've known you forever and ever and ever. And when I had first started in radio, I had just started doing like the weather on the weekends, and I was downloading programs, and that had kind of morphed into maybe doing like more on-air stuff, like a recorded show on the weekends there in Terrace, and everything just kind of kept going. So I don't know if I ever decided it. It just happened to me, but I'm not mad about it.
Now, did you find when you were announcing or talking to the mic that it was a little bit to work up to, or?
Yes, for sure. In fact, I think I got more nervous doing the show in Terrace because everybody than like doing the show here, where I really feel like I'm isolated. I'm in a room all by myself. Like I turn the mic off, I go home, I don't see anyone, but in Terrace, like I remember one time I had done a show, and the next day I had gone to get waxed, and in a very special area. And my lady who was doing my waxing, the esthetician, had like a full conversation with me about what I had done on the show the day before. And I was like, I don't know if I wanted this conversation to happen. I was like, this is a little too much, maybe.
Now, what was your first real kind of gig doing a show or on radio?
I told you I had done weekends in Terrace. It was a recorded show. Then it became a live show. I got afternoons in Terrace on Easy Rock. And then I did mornings there for, I want to say like 3 years. And I thought that was the job I would maybe have to do for the rest of my life, until Virgin Radio Calgary sent me an email and said, hey, we kind of want an interview with you. And I initially got the job out there also as a weekend swing host, which, if you don't know what that is, it's kind of like bottom of the totem pole for radio wise. You get to do weekends and fill in when somebody else is gone. And I think I did that job for a month until they offered me the midday show in Calgary. And so I did that for about a year. And then after Calgary, I moved to Edmonton, where they offered me afternoons in Edmonton. And from Edmonton, I ended up here in Vancouver, and I did the midday show here in Vancouver. And then I moved on, and now I'm doing the afternoon show.
How old were you from when you started to where you are now?
Well, I do have my Bell Media 10-year plaque hanging up. You can't see it, but I started in radio, I think, when I was 16, 17, and now I am 28 years old. So that's been the whole process. And I left Terrace in, I want to say 2017. So that's how the timeline's been.
And of course, a lot of people, who want to get into this media, they go, oh, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do all these other things. You kind of foregoed that. You did kind of like on-the-job training, right?
I did. Sometimes we do interviews with BCIT students, and they ask me like, oh, would you recommend what you did? And I'm like, no, I would not recommend it. It was a bit of a fluke, but initially, I would say if you were going to get into radio, what you should do is probably go to school, go to post-secondary education, and then you can do an internship. You get a small market job, and you work up from there. But I just kind of, like you said, forwent the schooling system, and I just did radio. But it's all credit to like starting in Terrace for sure, and just saying yes to everything, and always being down to learn something new.
You were wanting also to be an actress. Did you find doing some of those roles as in acting helping you with on air?
Yeah, there was a lot of things. It kind of felt like radio became the perfect storm for me that amalgamated all the things that I was into. I was really into writing. I was really into entertaining. And I was also really into singing at the time when I was like 16. So the singing lessons helped because it helped me to use my voice properly on air and understand like how important intonation is. I get to write every single day, which is awesome. I get to put on a show and I get to act and I get to deal with music every day. So it's like the perfect storm of everything I love.
And of course, one of those things that you did was that you have to bring a little bit of something. You have to bring something different when you're doing a show. You can't kind of copy someone else's work. What are some of those skits or insights that you did to kind of make yourself stand out from everyone else?
I think probably the biggest one that you would be referring to would be Mommy Issues Monday, which I didn't know was a big thing really until I left Terrace. And then my mom would get recognized around town like, oh, your mom from Mommy Issues Monday. But like I said, like it wasn't a big bit really until I left, but we would post them on SoundCloud all the time. And it was just something that we had stuck with a lot when I worked in Terrace that was, you're not sure who you're doing it for. You just kind of have to stick with it and tough it out.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thank you for staying with us. Becoming a radio personality calls for someone with a certain magnetism and that ability to convey that over the airwaves. Listeners should not only connect with the information being delivered, but also make a connection to the person delivering it. Let us return the conversation as Amy Spencer shares about Mommy Issues Monday.
So every single Monday, I would call my mom, and it would just be a bit between like a girl in her 20s and her mom. So we would do funny takes on things like the Oscars. And of course, my mom would play that she had no idea about anybody who was in the Oscars. And it would just be hot takes on things like that. It was fun. It was a lot of back and forth stuff. And bless my mom for putting up with all of it, because there was a lot of times we would finish one recording of something and be like, oh, that's not good enough. We can do it again. She'd be like, oh, okay. But she also acted a lot, so she got it.
Now, if I remember correctly, too, you did something that I thought was kind of interesting, because you would call in sick, but not to your job. Is that right?
That's true. That was another one of the bits that I did for a while, which was calling in sick to places that you don't work at. Again, which can be tricky in a small community. I can't remember if I branched out. I might have done some different communities in there too, because, you know, word gets around.
Of course, you know, like you said, you started here in Terrace, and then you went to a major market, which is unusual, right? Usually you kind of work your way up. Tell me about that first day of cracking the mic in the big market.
The whole process was pretty scary. For context, I had never driven further than Prince George. So even driving past Prince George was like eye-opening. I mean, like I'd driven with my family, but me personally behind the wheel, I'd never driven in a city. I didn't really know what I was getting into. I'd never lived anywhere else other than Terrace. So that was all scary in its own. And then cracking the mic, I'm pretty sure my voice sounded like, hi, it's Amy Spencer. Like I was so 13 octaves above where I usually sit, and it was ridiculous. But you know what? It all worked out. But I would hate to listen back to that first show.
Oh, that we have saved those tapes.
No, don't roll the tape. Don't roll the tape.
Well, you know, to be honest, for a small donation to my bank account on a bi-weekly basis, we can forever keep those things under wraps. All Just right. saying, you know.
E-transfer's already sent.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Hello, it's me, your friendly neighborhood Amy, and my mom.
Hello.
We're originally both from BC, and we've noticed a trend here in the great dreamland of Alberta. People love Tabor corn here.
Tabor corn!
I don't know what the hype is about, but we're gonna find out. What better place to find out than the Edmonton Corn Maze?
Another name for corn.
Another name for corn? Do I have any options? I don't
Hops, kernels, maize were great.
know. Beer, if you do it right.
My expert, Cheryl, learned all there is to learn about Tabor corn.
Oh,
Fact
there's-
number 1.
Tabor corn comes from Tabor.
That's a terrible fact. And our good friend Jen actually texted into the show, and she runs one of the Tabor corn stands. Apparently, don't get peaches and cream. It's like when you're buying wine at the liquor store, and you know they judge you if you get like 2 oceans. Peaches and cream is the 2 oceans of corn.
Hey, I bought 2 oceans yesterday.
Okay, bad news. We just passed like people who said they were in here for 2 hours.
Hours.
Like children
I
of
was,
the
like, worried
corn.
about the whole
I didn't
fact
want to
that
be.
they're
Oh!
Nice. Yes.
I don't like corn.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. The main task of a radio personality is to entertain the audience during a given time slot. The more listeners the radio personality has, the more the station can charge sponsors for advertising time. To fill the time, radio personalities can present skits, take input from the audience, or interview special guests. Let us return the conversation as Amy shares about the learning curve when you work in a major market.
Yeah, I did move really quickly there. Calgary has like such a special place in my heart because it's the first city I went to after leaving Terrace, and there was so many new experiences. There was a lot going on, and there was a lot to learn too. Like to come from Terrace and doing the show that I've always done and being like, okay, I guess that's it, to going to major market where there's like a lot of rules if you're going to do top 40 radio. That was such a crash course to try to learn. And it was a bit of a whirlwind, but it was also a great city because there was a lot of things I liked about Calgary. I liked how close it was to the mountains, which reminded me of home. I liked the people there. And you know what I really liked? Sure, the winter was cold, but then they got these things called Chinooks that would like warm everything up. So it would be plus 20, and in December you could go hit a patio. It was great.
Is that when you went from there to Vancouver, or?
No, I went to Edmonton. Stop over for a year in Edmonton.
Okay, and so you just kind of fine-tuned some things there?
Yes, for sure. Edmonton was it was a good like learning year there of definitely like fine-tuning some things in figuring out, like I went from all of these leaps and bounds of the basics to being like, okay, what do I sound like on air? What do I want to talk about? What works? What really doesn't work? Mm-hmm. And then getting the job to essentially coming back as close to home as I can.
Well, close to home and a lot more money. I mean, you have worked in Terrace.
This is true. That's true. But you have to live in Vancouver, right?
Well, yeah. Now the rent's probably similar to Vancouver, right?
That's true. Nowadays it is. It's crazy down here. Like a 1-bedroom is like $2,000, $2,100. Like,
you know, you think about things. Okay, you're in the city. How is it moving from city to city? Do you find some things were kind of similar as far as, you know, being in the industry?
lots of similarities and like, but you notice the differences that stick out to you like a lot more. Like Calgary was a really radio friendly city. So, radio people got together all the time, which was cool. Like, again, it was super good experience for my first city to move to. It's like people getting together for these radio get-togethers. In Edmonton, it happened like here and there, but that was kind of where I found my crew, was like my radio people. And then to move to Vancouver, radio people don't get together as much here, which is so funny to me. Like I was used to these radio get-togethers, but they don't happen here. But luckily, I have a lot of friends who have left Terrace and left the Northwest to come down to Van. So it was like, oh, my friends are here. Like, that was good, you know?
I was really surprised one day. I'm kind of going through the stations and I'm watching the news because, you know, we have to, you know, monitor things. And I go, wait a minute. I know this girl who's doing traffic. How did that happen?
That was I'm just doing traffic fill-in on CTV Morning Live. I also next week have to be trained to do weather. I have no business doing either of those things. I don't know what I'm doing at all, but I am doing it. So that's good. But it happened just because sometimes, of course, people on CTV, they take holidays, and during COVID, they didn't have a lot of people to fill in. So they were like, let's try to do some cross promotion and see if anybody from radio would be interested in it. And so that's kind of how I lucked into that. And they trained me how to do work in front of the green screen, which again, I don't know what I'm doing at all, but I'm trying. And it's fun. It's a ton of fun. Traffic was difficult. I had to learn the entire map of downtown Vancouver, and I actually walk to and from work. So I don't drive a hell of a lot. And that was a lot to learn, but fun.
So do you, when you get in for a taxi, you kind of say, oh, you need to go here and avoid this area and don't go down over there?
Oh yeah, I'm like, there's a protest outside of BC Place, because there's always a protest outside of BC Place. Take a different route.
So Robert Pictou of Open Connection told me today that tomorrow we are actually here at the fire hall to do their firefighter fitness training. He thinks he can beat me. Little does he know, I'm about to get my swole on a little early, some extra training. Whew. Okay, I think I'm good. I think I'm in shape now, if round is a shape.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
TV hosts and anchors are up while the rest of the country is still sleeping. They prepare for broadcast by catching up on the news and getting a jump start on the day ahead. In this final segment of Open Connection, Amy shares her morning routine.
I have to be at work at 5 a.m. to do traffic. If you're there to do weather, you actually have to be there at 4:30, I think, to like start the slides earlier, because with weather, the weather never changes, right? So you build those slides in the morning super early, but then if you're going to do traffic, because it's changing throughout the morning, you update it throughout, which means I get up at the butt crack of dawn to do that, and then still come in the afternoon to do my radio show.
Now, of course, some people, when you think about it, it's like, oh, you just talk into a microphone. It's not all that hard, but there's a lot of energy you have to put into it when you have to project yourself into that microphone, right?
Yeah, I'm not that funny. I could not just crack the mic and go, you can do it, Robert. I've seen you do it. I cannot do that. So my show is like very planned when I do it in the afternoon. I want it to sound like it's not planned, but it is like, I'm going to start prepping the show immediately after this. I already have 3 of my breaks written out. I know exactly what I'm doing once I get into the afternoon for every single break, which again, not all radio hosts are like that, but I'm a stickler for that. I like to know exactly what I'm getting into.
If someone wants to get into the industry, what kind of advice would you give them on how to get in and how to best prepare for this kind of, career?
I would definitely say take a post-secondary program. There's a ton of good ones across Canada, like Ryerson and Humber and BCIT, and everybody's from everywhere. It doesn't really matter where you go to school, but I would recommend going that route. And then usually you have to go to a small market to start your career somewhere like Terrace. And I would just say yes to everything. Like whatever it is, say yes to it, try it out. If it's not for you, you can say no the next time. You can always back out, but it's always good to try things and to try to learn new things.
Well, and let me see. Now, you've been gone from Terrace for about 7 years now, something like that?
When was 2017? I'm not good at math.
It's 4 years, 5 years, somewhere around there.
5 years? Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Your commercials are still on the air.
I know. Oh, you think I don't come back once a month and I hear me and I'm like, the Chilean Dancer pub. Oh. Now, you also kind of, you could say that you did a lot of, as far as a social media presence with TikTok and Instagram and things like that. Did you find
those things kind of helped you out also with your career?
Yeah, that was a big learning curve. Actually, when I went to Calgary, they were big sticklers on doing social media. And like working in a small market, it wasn't as crucial to the job. Like, you know, you'd post a Facebook article here or there. But then when I lived in Calgary, it was so strict on posting a Facebook article at least 3 times during your show. You'd have to post at least one Instagram story. Every single hour you have to post on Twitter. Make sure you answer all the text messages. At least one post on Instagram, a solid static post. And that was even before TikTok was a thing. Like there's a lot of moving parts to it that radio isn't just radio anymore. It's you're a whole character on the internet. And TikTok is this whole new beast. Don't ask me how to do it. I'm trying, but
So far in your career, about 10 years now, what's been your biggest interview?
probably this year, I think probably Jason Derulo was the biggest one. You know, Jason Derulo, that guy. That was cool. Actually, the pandemic has been cool for interviews because it meant like a lot of bigger artists were willing to do Zoom interviews. Because if you think about it, usually they have to come to town when they're on tour, they're promoting an album, they go to every single radio station and it's a crazy day. But then from a celebrity perspective, when the pandemic hit and you can just do it in your house from your own set and bang out 40 interviews in one day, it's like way better for them. So it's kind of been good to like score bigger interviews, you know?
And of course, let's go to the other side of the spectrum. What are some of those painful interviews?
This one. I'm just kidding. One of my favorite things that I like to tell people about here when they're like, oh, crazy, you work in Vancouver, it's crazy. I'm like, yeah, but you know what? I gave away a sack of potatoes on air once in Terrace, and that was hot. People loved that. Like, that's actually when I peaked, I think.
Any plans for the future of Amy?
I think I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing because it's kind of been working out. I think I just ride this train until I can't ride this train anymore. People like to ask me like, oh, what are your career plans? And I'm like, I didn't really plan any of this. It's been a really, really fortunate turn of events for me. And I'm just going to keep hoping it works out.
Is there anything I might have missed that you'd like to add?
No, I just want to send my love to back home. I'm going to be there in like 2 weeks. I'll meet you at Sherwood for a pint.
Night before Weed Day, and all through the country, people were excited, to put it quite bluntly. Air fresheners were hung by their chimneys with care, in hopes that their landlords don't smell the air. Mama in her drug rug and I in my beanie were browsing legally online, doing so quite keenly, when what to my wondering eye should appear? Justin Trudeau, the marijuana pioneer, issued a PSA for the people of Canada, his hair flowing in the wind like a fluffy tarantula. My fellow Canadians with bright red eyes, at 12:01 tonight we will legalize. You can smoke in the parks, the river valley as well, but please avoid smoking on the ski hill. Smoking at a cemetery simply won't do, and don't even think at the Edmonton Zoo. Orlac Park will be off limits and no cannabis consumption at outdoor exhibits. But my dear PM, then where can we blaze it? Well, 10 meters from any bus stop and we might have to raise it. But we heard him exclaim as he rolled out of sight, Happy Weed Eve to all. And to all, a rad-eye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind to his heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Pictou.